All right, let's dig into this issue that we heard from the Conservatives today, an election promise to create RCMP units to deal with barbaric cultural practices and a separate tip line. Let me show you this.
A re-elected Conservative government will also commit to establishing an RCMP tip line so that citizens and victims can call with information about incidents of barbaric cultural practices here in Canada, or to notify authorities that a child or a woman is at risk of being victimized. We will also create an integrated RCMP unit in Canada's major cities.
Okay, so what do we make of this idea, and what is this actually about? Amanda, do you want to start us off on this one?
Sure. I mean, I've been struggling with this one all day about how to respond to it, about how to think about it. The only thing I can come up with is that this is a barbaric political practice. This is not about barbaric cultural practices. It is disturbing in the worst way, for obvious reasons. We're essentially creating a snitch line, which Canadians should be looking over our shoulders at our neighbors to determine whether or not we should make a call, incite criminal investigation through the RCMP around something being deemed a barbaric cultural practice, which I don't know if you or I or anyone in this country could actually define what that is. They certainly didn't define it in their press conference today. It is race baiting. It is divisive. It is the worst kind of politics, and it is exactly what we've come to expect from Stephen Harper in his continued promotion of cultural identity issues.
Okay. So who wants in? Jeff, you want in on this?
Well,
I mean, I think do you know what they're trying to target here? I think
sure.
Yeah, okay. So maybe let's start with that point. What are they actually trying to do with this
Let me ask Amanda a couple of questions.
Oh, no, don't. Let's not get into that now.
Well,
just
no,
explain.
okay, I'll make
I'd love to take a couple of questions on this one, Jeff.
What are we talking about? Amanda says she doesn't understand. Well, let's start with forced underage marriage, and let's move to female genital mutilation.
These are illegal practices.
Well,
do we have an epidemic of those practices in the country that you're aware of, Jeff?
Sorry,
I mean,
is there?
While it's horrific.
Is there an epidemic?
Is this an epidemic? Shouldn't we be dealing with missing and murdered Indigenous women? Why didn't we set up a hotline for that, or set up a hotline for domestic violence, or set up a hotline for urban gang violence? Why are we setting up this construct that we have an epidemic of the problems that you just suggested?
Okay, let's let him respond now. Yeah.
I don't think anybody's talking about an epidemic, but the reality, I think,
then why do we need a hotline?
The reality is that these practices exist. They're unacceptable. They're unacceptable to Canadians. They're unacceptable to Canadian women. They do not conform in the least with our values. And what is wrong with drawing attention to them?
Why not?
And preventing them.
But why not just allow the police to deal with it, given that they're illegal practices? Marie, if you have an answer, go ahead.
No, I'm actually on your side for
Thank
once.
you.
Partly. I'm not sure. Amanda's brain is exploding.
Yeah.
I'm
my
not
head's
sure.
popping off, actually.
I'm not sure the hotline is the part that I agree with, but the Conservatives tabled a bill against forced and underage marriage, and when you talk to women's groups, they do say that there is a problem. In 2013, 219 forced marriages, and they say it's more because a lot of those are not reported.
Sure.
And so, I mean, if you're at a point where women's groups say that this law is a good idea to allow a judge to proactively intervene, to seize a passport, keep someone assigned to a region and not travel, then perhaps there is a reason to intervene.
There's a difference between a law and a tip line, right?
No, but
exactly.
scrap the tip line. But what I wanted to get to
that's what I'm taking offense
with. But if I can just finish my point.
Yes, you can.
Scrap the tip line. There's also millions of dollars of money being invested into prevention and sensibilization or awareness to those communities. And that part is what women's groups asked for. And in that sense, I don't think that it's necessarily such a bad thing. I'm not saying that you don't need money for domestic violence or Aboriginal women,
it's not
Amanda. But I mean, if you're going to table a law, I think it kind of makes sense to put in money to make sure
I only
it
have
works.
time for one last thought from Robin before I have to take a break. We can come back to it
Amanda
after.
touched on this, but I'd go back to the fact that I'm looking at the status of the minister's status of women, standing up and suggesting that there's a particular community in Canada, or there are particular communities that are vulnerable to a certain type of crime, barbaric practices, and that therefore need some dedicated resources to it. At the same time, this is a government that has stood up and it consistently said that 1,200 missing and murdered Indigenous women do not need any specific resources. They're just crimes, and they need to be dealt criminally by the RCMP. Well, barbaric practices are all illegal, and they should be absolutely prosecuted and pursued in that terms. This is also a government that had 4 years and a mandate, a majority mandate, where it could have brought in whatever tip line and resources it thought. It actually brought forward a law to Parliament. It's simply trying to raise the same title it put in that law, which was zero tolerance for barbaric cultural practices. It just wants to say the term barbaric cultural practices as many times as it can. And I don't know why it's necessary to single out the cultural in this term, in this election, other than for the political points that it's already gaining by hitting a nerve on other divisive issues.